Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we continue following the emotional journey of LyTuDiep and CEO James. In the previous episode, after days of exhaustion and solitude in the wilderness, Diep could no longer carry on. She collapsed by the roadside in the pouring rain. Fortunately, a kind woman living nearby found her and took her in. Thanks to this help, Diep gradually recovered. And as soon as she could stand again, she resumed her journey, a journey back to the man she loves, driven by a fierce belief that James was still waiting for her, that he hadn't let go. At the same time, in another place, James, after days of torment and fruitless searching, finally received a crucial piece of information from Officer Lee. It was the first real lead after so many days of silence. Diep had been seen in a remote mountainous area. Without hesitation, James rushed to the location, his heart pounding with hope and fear, that he might make it in time, or once again miss her by a heartbeat. Will fate smile upon them, allowing two souls once lost to reunite? After all the pain, misunderstandings, and distance, will their love still be strong enough to bring them back together? Join me in today's episode to discover the next chapter of this arduous yet profoundly heartfelt journey. After gradually recovering thanks to the kind and attentive care of the stranger, Diep felt her body had regained enough strength to continue the journey. Not wanting to become a burden to anyone, she soon asked for permission to leave. Before she left, the woman gently pressed a small bag of cookies into Diep's hands along with heartfelt wishes. It brought tears to Diep's eyes. But she understood, the road ahead was hers alone, and only she could walk it to the end. On the first day after leaving the small house where she was saved, Diep saw bushes along the forest edge heavy with fruit. She recalled the woman's words, "Each kilo of ripe fruit you pick can be sold to the villagers, they'll bring it to the market." Without hesitation, she carefully selected the juiciest ones and placed them into a cloth bag she had sewn herself. Within a morning, she gathered a decent amount. When she sold them, the villagers paid her a small sum, not much, but enough to warm her heart. The first thing she did was visit a nearby grocery stall, buying a soft loaf of bread and a small box of milk. It had been so long since Diep had had a proper meal. As she ate, she thought to herself, only about 30 kilometers left. If I push through and walk continuously for 2 days, I'll make it. With that thought, her eyes lit up with hope. Without hesitation, she packed up the few belongings she had, adjusted her worn-out shoes, and stepped forward. Rain or shine, she didn't allow herself to stop. On her back was a small backpack containing a few clothes and a plastic tarp she used for shelter from sun and rain. She fashioned the tarp into a makeshift cloak, just enough to keep the rain from soaking her completely. On cooler days, she walked without resting, taking advantage of the gentler sun. When thirsty, she stopped by fresh mountain streams, cupped her hands, and drank the cold, clear water that seemed to give her renewed strength. When hunger gnawed at her, she would pause in the woods to gather a few ripe fruits or dig up wild roots just to get by. The little money she had left was spent sparingly, used only when she could no longer push through, to buy a piece of bread or a candy to fight the hunger on the road. At night, deep in the forest or near deserted farms, Diep used her tarp as a temporary shelter. A hidden spot beneath large tree branches, a few dry sticks as bedding, and a shawl wrapped around her, that became her home for the journey. Despite the hardships, Diep's face shone with determination. Every step on the muddy trail, every storm she had to dodge, every night spent listening to the eerie songs of forest insects, each was a trial she faced with unwavering courage. Because in her heart, the flame of love had never gone out. She believed James was still waiting, somewhere at the end of this road. And so, she kept walking. Alone, but never truly lonely. Every step was a promise to herself. No matter what happens, I must reach him. As soon as James received the call from Officer Lee, he immediately dropped everything he was doing. The important meeting was left hanging. His phone was still ringing with calls from business partners, but none of that mattered anymore. Only one thought echoed in his mind: there's news about Diep. His heart pounded so violently it felt like it might burst. How many days had it been since he last had a trace of her? How many nights had he sat still by the window, staring into the void, asking himself, where is she? Is she cold? Is someone there with her? Now, even the faintest glimmer of hope was enough to send James racing off like the wind. At the police station, he met with Lee. Lee stepped out of the operations room and, upon seeing James, nodded firmly. This report seems credible. A woman living in the mountain outskirts said she found a young girl matching our description. The girl had collapsed on the roadside after heavy rain, extremely weak, but after a few days of rest, she recovered, and just left. James didn't wait to hear the rest. His hands clenched tightly, overcome with emotion. A surge of feeling rose in his chest: relief, urgency. Diep is alive. And she's on her way back. Lee handed him the address of the small house where Diep had stayed. They didn't waste a single moment and sped off at the highest speed they could manage. The wind rushed through the slightly open window, the engine's hum echoed like the rhythm of a racing heartbeat. James sat in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on the road ahead, but his mind was flooded with images of the woman he loved, slender, frail, solitary, yet so resilient. She asked for directions to the city, Lee added while driving. She might be trying to walk back. But with her condition, there's no way she could get far. We might still catch up. When they arrived, they saw a small wooden house with a rusty tin roof and a low fence covered in wildflowers. A middle-aged woman stepped outside, her eyes warm and gentle. Upon hearing James describe the girl, she nodded and spoke, voice trembling. Yes. That girl was very weak. But her eyes, I'll never forget them. You could tell she carried something important in her heart. Yesterday morning, she left, taking some wild fruit and bread I prepared for her. She said if all went well, she'd reach her destination in 2 days. James thanked her, but his eyes were already red with emotion. He turned to Lee, no words needed, just the silent understanding between two men, both driven by concern for a lone girl facing a harsh journey. Without delay, they split up to search. They followed the narrow dirt paths leading into the forest, every muddy slope, every jagged turn. They stopped at roadside stalls, village markets, and every fruit vendor they could find, asking anyone who might have seen her. Have you seen a petite girl, carrying a cloth bag, traveling alone, looking tired, maybe buying bread or asking for directions? They must have asked countless times. And each time, James looked deeply into the eyes of the people he questioned, hoping for just one spark, one signal that she had passed through. The sky began to dim. The air hung heavy with the lingering moisture of the previous night's rain, and the road seemed soaked in coldness. But within James, a fire continued to burn, not of restlessness, but of a love that would not waver. Because he knew, if she had the strength to endure all that hardship alone, then he had no right to falter. He would find her. Even if it meant walking to the ends of the earth. While continuing the urgent search with Officer Lee, James didn't forget to share the joyous news with the most important person in his life, his mother. His hands trembled slightly from emotion as he pulled out his phone, dialed the familiar number, and held it to his ear. After just a short ring, her familiar voice came through, tinged with concern. "James? Any news, my son?" James took a deep breath, as if trying to hold back the storm of emotions welling inside him. Then he spoke gently, voice slightly trembling. "Mom. I found a lead on Diep. Someone saved her, just yesterday. She collapsed from exhaustion, but now she's okay. And Mom, she's on her way back. On the other end of the line, there was a brief moment of silence. Then came a soft gasp. "Oh my God, thank heaven!" Her voice quivered, but James could clearly hear the wave of relief spreading through each word. "She's alive, and she's coming back. Thank you, my son, for not giving up." After a pause thick with emotion, she continued, this time with firm resolve. "I want to go with you to find her. If she's on her way back, I can't just sit here anymore. I want to see her with my own eyes, safe. I want to bring her home myself." James smiled, a genuine smile after so many dark days. His heart felt lighter, as if a cool breeze had swept through his soul. The image of his mother, the very woman who had once doubted and distanced herself from Diep, now wanting to go search for her, deeply moved him. Perhaps all the misunderstandings, the distance, and the invisible walls were beginning to melt away. "I'm so glad to hear you say that, Mom. I'll turn the car around and come get you now. We'll go together. We will find her, I promise." On the other end, she could only manage a soft yes before falling silent. But James knew, his mother was probably crying, too. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of relief and hope. Right after the call, James and Officer Lee made a quick stop at a roadside station. James took the chance to head back and pick up his mother, his heart full of emotion. Amid the damp air left by the rain, a soft beam of sunlight peeked through the forest canopy, like a gentle sign from fate, whispering that the reunion was drawing near. Before setting out with James to look for Diep, his mother decided to visit a special place, the small house of the elderly couple who had once taken Diep in before she left. She knew that, during such a lonely journey, if there was any place Diep might think of returning to, it would be this one, a humble refuge once filled with warmth and kinship that Diep had always been grateful for. That morning, a soft sunlight followed the night's rain, and the path leading to the couple's home still carried the damp scent of earth. When she arrived, the old couple was resting under the porch roof. At the sight of James's mother walking in, surprise flashed across their faces. It had been a long time since they'd heard any news of James or Diep. But as she gently began to speak, their eyes slowly lit up. "I have news about Diep," she said softly, her voice low but warm. "Yesterday, someone saw her." The girl collapsed from exhaustion but was lucky to be rescued and cared for in time. "She's recovered now, and is trying to find her way back." The couple could hardly believe their ears. The old woman clutched her chest, letting out a sigh of deep relief, while her husband nodded repeatedly, as if a heavy weight had finally lifted from his heart. "Oh heavens, the girl is alive, and well. Praise be to God, to the ancestors for watching over her." A hush fell over the yard, heavy with emotion. James's mother looked at the elderly couple before her, and her chest tightened with feeling. Though not related by blood, the affection these two held for Diep was deep, genuine, and unwavering. After explaining the situation fully, she added, "James and I are about to head out to find her. But I came here first, to share the good news so you can be at peace, and also to ask for your help. If, and I only say if, Diep happens to return here, please call me or James immediately. I believe that in her heart, this place might still be a stop she remembers." They agreed at once, even promising to inform some close neighbors in case anyone happened to see the girl nearby. "Don't worry. If she returns, we'll keep her here, let her rest properly, and contact you right away. We pray that the two of you find her soon." Before leaving, James's mother turned to look at the little house once more. She brought her hands together in a respectful gesture, bowing deeply to the elderly couple, her eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "Thank you, truly, thank you from the heart." As she stepped out the gate, a surge of hope welled up within her. It felt as if, by sharing the good news, the whole world had begun to join her and James, waiting for a long-awaited reunion between those who had once lost each other, but had never stopped finding their way back. That afternoon, the sun slowly dipped behind the distant tree line, casting a pale golden glow across the rugged red dirt road scattered with stones and wild grass. James had spent the entire day with Officer Lee, asking around every alleyway, every small shop, and every market on the outskirts. They had shown Diep's photo to countless strangers, hoping for a clue. But all they received were polite, regretful shakes of the head. Despite all their efforts, James still couldn't find her. There were moments he felt Diep was just a few steps away, as if he only needed to turn around and he would see that familiar slender figure. But each time, the illusion faded into thin air. As the sun dipped lower, James stopped by an open patch of land near the forest, a strangely quiet place. He sank down onto a stone, eyes distant as he stared off into the fading horizon. Inside him was a swirl of emotions, hope and helplessness colliding. He knew Diep was alive, knew she was on her way back, and yet, he still couldn't hold her in his arms, couldn't call her name with certainty among the sea of unfamiliar faces. Meanwhile, James's mother had been roaming the area alone on her old motorbike. Tirelessly, she stopped to speak with shopkeepers, motorbike taxi drivers, and villagers resting under trees or fetching water. She rode from place to place, driven by an instinct deep within, whispering that Diep was nearby, and that just a little more persistence, a little more heart, would be enough. As she passed by the empty roadside clearing, her eyes caught sight of a familiar figure, tall, slightly slouched shoulders, sitting in complete stillness. She recognized him instantly, her son. She stopped the bike and slowly walked toward James, her heart aching at the sight. Her strong, resilient son now sat there, quiet and defeated like a lost child. "James," she called gently, sitting down beside him. He looked up, eyes red, yet still burning with unwavering determination. "I'm sorry. I really thought we'd find Diep today. She's so close, and yet I can't reach her." She placed a hand on his shoulder, giving it a soft squeeze. "It's okay. You've done so well. Listen to me, at least now we know she's alive. And that she's still trying, step by step, to come back. That's already something so precious. She's walking toward us, and we're walking toward her. We're close now. So very close." James bowed his head and took his mother's hand. The two sat together in the stillness of the fading evening. Despite the fatigue, despite the disappointment, they held tightly to one burning belief, that Diep was on her way home. And with all the love in their hearts and their quiet determination, they knew they would find her. If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then the day after. But surely, that day was drawing near. After spending the night under the thick canopy of a tree in a sparse forest, Diep woke up in the early morning mist. The soft chirping of birds in the forest and the scent of damp earth after the rain made her shiver. Her body still ached with exhaustion, but her mind was already prepared for a new day, a day she believed would bring her closer to James. She folded up her tarp, threw it over her shoulders, and continued walking through the relentless rain. The raindrops lashed against her face like whips, the wind sliced through her clothes like icy blades, but she kept her head down and moved forward. The tarp, hastily tied over her head, shielded her from both rain and wind, almost covering her entirely. She trudged along the soggy dirt road, where rainwater had gathered into large puddles beneath her feet. Suddenly, the distant sound of a car engine echoed through the rain. Diep lifted her head. A familiar vehicle was speeding toward her, headlights piercing the curtain of misty rain, a silver car, water spraying wildly beneath its wheels. Her heart started to race. That car looked just like James's. She squinted, trying to see more clearly. As it drew nearer, in a brief, flashing moment, she managed to catch a glimpse of the license plate. Her eyes widened. It was James's car. It was him. She screamed, waving her hand frantically, her voice hoarse as she cried out into the downpour. "James! It's me! James!" But the rain was too loud, drowning out everything, and James, tense and focused behind the wheel, was speeding ahead, his mind consumed by urgency. All he could think of was getting farther, faster, reaching the areas where villagers had last reported seeing someone who looked like Diep. He didn't see the figure of the girl on the roadside, wrapped tightly in a rain-soaked tarp. The car flew past her. A sudden gust of wind blew the back of the tarp loose. But it was already too late. He didn't see her. He couldn't recognize her. Diep froze in place for a moment. Then, without hesitation, she turned and ran after the car. Her feet splashed through muddy puddles as she chased after him, calling out between desperate breaths. "James! James, wait for me!" That rain was no ordinary downpour. It came down as if the whole sky had broken open, the torrent slashing at her face, her body, blurring everything in sight. Every step Diep took grew heavier, as if her feet were weighed down by stone. She tried to run, she truly did, but the car sped ahead too quickly. "James!" she cried out, her voice hoarse. "James, it's me!" Her voice shattered in the wind. But the only response was the roar of rain and the crackling thunder overhead. The sound of the storm drowned out all her desperate cries. No one heard. No one answered. The car disappeared into the distance, its taillights fading with each hopeless step forward. Still, Diep kept running through the curtain of rain, feet sinking into mud, slipping and falling, but rising again, running still. She ran as though if she didn't, she would lose the most precious thing in her life. Rain whipped against her skin, her tears mingled with the downpour, and no one could tell where the pain ended and the storm began. Until finally, the car was gone. The road was empty, save for the pounding rain and the ragged breathing of a lone girl, standing in the middle of a waterlogged clearing. Diep froze. Her heart clenched painfully. She collapsed to her knees. Fell completely onto the drenched ground. Hands covering her face, sobs breaking free, lost in the howling wind. She had seen him. It was James. The man she had been searching for all this time. He had been right there. Right in front of her. But he hadn't seen her. The moment they passed each other was like fate reaching out for a cruel, fleeting touch, one that cut deep with despair. Diep cried silently. No blame. No anger. Just a slow, dull ache seeping into her bones. But in the midst of that sorrow, a voice rose quietly from within her. "He's looking for you too." She clenched her fists. Closed her eyes. Even the smallest flicker of hope was enough to stop her from falling apart. "If I go back now, I'll lose him again. I must keep going. I have to find him." And so Diep wiped her tears, or rather, let the rain wash away every trace of pain. She stood up. Despite the cold, the exhaustion, the way her legs trembled beneath her, her eyes began to blaze once more. Not with despair, but with resolve. The rain still poured. It fell like a thick wall between her and the world, between her and James. Diep sat for a moment in the empty clearing, water dripping from her hair, streaking down cheeks now pale and numb. Her heart felt crushed. That familiar car. That license plate she remembered so well, she had seen it. Reached for it. Only to watch it vanish. Like a dream that broke just as it was within reach. Why didn't you see me? Why did we miss each other like this? She asked herself over and over again. The name James still echoed in her throat, hoarse, unfinished, as if the last part of her plea had been swallowed by the storm. But then, she looked up. The rain kept falling. The tarp lay nearby, soaked in mud. She reached out, trembling, picked it up, brushed it off gently, and draped it back over her head. Once more, she clenched her fists, a silent vow. There was only one thing left to do: keep walking. Only by moving forward, only by returning home, could she find him again. She couldn't collapse here. She couldn't turn back. James was somewhere ahead, and she believed with every part of her soul that he was braving the storm too, just as she was, to find her. Diep stood, her legs heavy like stone. A chill ran down her spine. Her clothes clung to her skin, soaked through, mud coating the hem of her skirt, but still, she moved. One step. Then another. James. I'm coming. In her mind, the image of his car racing past was still vivid, a sharp cut across her heart, and yet, also a flame igniting a longing that could not be extinguished. From that moment on, she could not stop thinking of him. Could not stop longing to see him again. There was no other way. She couldn't wait in one place. She couldn't go back, hoping that he'd somehow spot her. No, she was too close now. She had seen him. Felt the breath of reunion on her skin. So even if it meant walking for miles more, she would walk. Diep continued in silence, each step heavy but unyielding. Her lips pressed together, as if in an unspoken prayer. Please, let me see him again. Just one more time. Please don't let us miss each other again. And under the pouring rain, on that empty road, the image of a small girl with a tarp over her head, walking quietly but resolutely forward, became something unshakably strong. She didn't know what else to do, only that she had to keep moving. With all her love. With all her strength. And with all the faith she had. In a reunion that was no longer far away. Meanwhile, on James's side. Along the rain-slicked road, his car sped forward in a blur of urgency. But deep inside, James suddenly felt a strange sense of emptiness, like he had just missed something important. He glanced at the rearview mirror, then quickly looked to both sides of the road, the heavy rain blurring everything in sight. He saw nothing. But his heart was pounding harder than ever, a strange restlessness tightening in his chest. Diep, where are you? Could you be so close, and I just didn't know? But James couldn't stop. He was racing against fate, against time itself. With every minute that passed, the need to find her only grew more desperate. He had to keep going, farther, faster, before that fragile silhouette disappeared once again, like so many dreams that had once slipped through his fingers. What he didn't know was that the girl he was searching for had been just a moment away. Two souls, one moving forward, the other passing by, had nearly touched in the rain-soaked hands of fate. Will destiny be strong enough to bring back two hearts that had missed their beat? Will love truly light the way for them to return to one another? Or, will this be yet another missed encounter, another painful what-if? All of it still remains a mystery. And perhaps, the answer will only be revealed when both of them have the courage to keep walking forward. To trust in the love that still burns brightly in their hearts. Stay tuned for the next episode tomorrow, everyone. Where love will once again speak. And fate will decide. Will they find each other? In the storm of life?
Hello, xin chào tất cả mọi người. Chào mọi người đến với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì kênh mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người video của CEO James và Lý Tử Diệp nha mọi người. Tiếp nối với video ngày hôm qua thì hôm nay sẽ tiếp tục kể cho mọi người câu chuyện của CEO James và Lý Tử Diệp trong ngày hôm nay. Hôm nay tưởng chừng họ đã gặp được nhau nhưng mà họ lại thoáng qua nhau một cách rất là vô tình. Mọi người ơi, nếu như mọi người yêu quý kênh cũng như là ủng hộ cho kênh mình thì mong là mọi người hãy đăng ký kênh, sau đó là bật chuông thông báo lên để có thể nhận được thông báo mỗi khi mà kênh mình ra video mới. Và đặc biệt nếu như mà mọi người yêu quý kênh mình hơn nữa thì hãy chia sẻ video này đến những người khác để mọi người cũng có thể xem được video hay và ý nghĩa này mọi người nhé. Cảm ơn mọi người rất là nhiều vì trong thời gian qua đã ủng hộ kênh của mình, và hy vọng rằng chúng ta sẽ có thời gian đồng hành cùng nhau trong những video tiếp theo. Và chào tạm biệt mọi người, mong là tiếp tục gặp lại mọi người trong những video sau nha.